Some people are remembered for loud moments, for battles, for victories, for voices that changed nations. But Isaac's story feels different, quieter, and because of that, many overlook him. But strength is not always loud. Sometimes, the strongest people are the ones who endure quietly, the ones who carry pain without becoming bitter, face conflict without becoming destructive, continue forward, even when life wounds them deeply. Isaac inherited a promise, but he also inherited fear, pressure, family brokenness. And throughout his life, he would face a choice again and again. Would he become consumed by conflict or continue walking in peace? Isaac was not born into an ordinary story. Before he ever took his first breath, he was already carrying expectations. He was the promised son, the miracle child Abraham and Sarah waited decades to receive. And perhaps from the very beginning, people looked at Isaac differently, not simply as a son, but as the continuation of the covenant, the future of the promise, Abraham's legacy. And living under a legacy that large can feel heavy, especially when your father is Abraham, a man remembered for extraordinary faith, a man whose journey shaped generations. And now, Isaac would spend his life walking behind that shadow, trying to carry something he did not choose for himself. Years passed. Abraham grew old, and Isaac entered adulthood carrying both promise and pressure. Then came Rebekah, a woman who brought comfort into his quiet life. And Scripture says, Isaac loved her. One of the rare moments where the Bible openly reveals affection so simply. But soon, another familiar pain appeared. Rebekah could not conceive. And once again, the promise seemed threatened by silence. Years passed. Waiting returned. But unlike Abraham's earlier failures, Isaac prayed, persistently, quietly. And eventually, God answered. Rebekah conceived twins, Esau and Jacob. 2 sons, 2 futures, 2 paths that would slowly tear the family apart. At one point, Isaac settled among foreign people, and there, fear returned. The same fear Abraham once carried. Fear for his life because of his wife's beauty. And Isaac repeated the same mistake. She is my sister. The same fear, the same deception, the same pattern. And perhaps that is one of the hardest truths in life. What remains unhealed often repeats itself. Fear can pass quietly through generations, not through intention, but through unresolved wounds. And Isaac's story reminds us that inheriting faith from others does not automatically heal what lives inside us. Some battles must still be faced personally. But perhaps the clearest picture of Isaac's character came through something simple. Wells. Isaac prospered greatly. His crops multiplied, his livestock increased, and the people around him became jealous. Again and again, the wells his servants dug were taken by others. Arguments followed. Conflict surrounded him. Now imagine the pressure building inside him, the frustration, the exhaustion, the temptation to fight back. And yet, Isaac responded differently. Instead of escalating conflict, he moved and dug another well, then another, and another. Each well became more than water. They became symbols of rejection, perseverance, restraint, and quiet endurance. Others fought for power. Isaac fought for peace. not because he was weak, but because he understood something deeper. Not every battle deserves your life. Some people destroy themselves trying to win conflicts that never should have consumed them. But Isaac kept moving forward, refusing bitterness, refusing pride, refusing endless war. Until finally, there was room. And Isaac said, "Now the Lord has given us space." What strength that must have taken, to continue choosing peace in a world constantly provoking conflict. But the deepest conflict in Isaac's life did not come from outsiders. It came from within his own home. Isaac loved Esau. Rebekah loved Jacob. And slowly, favoritism poisoned the family. Small divisions became deep fractures, and eventually, deception entered the house. As Isaac grew older, his eyesight faded. The once strong son of Abraham now weakened by age, and believing his life was nearing its end, he prepared for one final act as patriarch of the family. The blessing. Not merely words, but inheritance, identity, future. A sacred passing of favor from one generation to the next. And Isaac intended to give it to Esau, the son he loved deeply. So he called for him. "Go hunt for me. Prepare the meal I love, and afterward, I will give you my blessing." But Rebekah overheard, and fear entered her heart, because she believed the promise belonged to Jacob, and instead of waiting, she chose control. Rebekah quickly set a plan into motion. She prepared the meal herself. Then she covered Jacob's arms and neck with goat skins to imitate Esau's hair. Imagine Jacob in that moment, nervous, conflicted, stepping into deception inside his own father's home. And perhaps somewhere deep inside, he already understood that blessings gained through dishonesty never come without consequences. Then Jacob entered Isaac's tent, and the scene that followed feels painfully human. Isaac listened carefully. The voice, it sounds like Jacob. But his failing eyes could no longer guide him, so he reached out his hands. The goat skin felt like Esau. The deception worked, and slowly, Isaac's uncertainty faded. Then Isaac spoke the blessing. Words of inheritance, prosperity, authority, a future spoken aloud over the wrong son. And once the blessing had been given, it could not simply be taken back. Then moments later, Esau entered, carrying the meal Isaac had requested, and suddenly, everything shattered. Imagine the silence, the confusion, then realization. Isaac understood. Jacob had deceived him. And Scripture says, Isaac trembled violently. Not slightly, violently, as if the full weight of betrayal crashed upon him all at once. A father realizing his family had broken apart beneath him. Isaac was powerless to reverse what had been done. He could only grieve the consequences. Because deception rarely wounds only one person. It spreads, like fracture lines through an entire family. Esau's grief soon turned to anger, and anger turned toward revenge. Jacob fled the household. Rebekah would lose the closeness of the son she fought to protect. And Isaac, the quiet man of peace, would spend his final years watching division consume his family. All because small favoritism had slowly become deep brokenness. And perhaps that is one of the saddest truths in life. Families rarely collapse in a single moment. The damage often begins quietly. Small compromises, unspoken resentment, partiality left unchecked. Until eventually, what once felt manageable becomes destructive. Isaac's story reminds us that strength is not always loud. The world often celebrates dominance, aggression, and constant victory. But Isaac reveals another kind of strength. The strength to endure quietly, choose peace over pride, walk away from unnecessary conflict, and continue faithfully despite disappointment. Again and again, life gave Isaac reasons to become bitter, reasons to fight endlessly, reasons to let pain harden him. But he kept choosing peace. And maybe that is one of the hardest choices a person can make, because peace often feels weaker than retaliation, until you realize how much strength it takes to remain gentle in a harsh world. Isaac also reminds us that family wounds run deep. Fear repeated itself through generations. Favoritism fractured relationships. Pain passed from parent to child. And perhaps many of us understand that more than we wish we did, because brokenness rarely stays isolated. What remains unresolved often echoes through generations. But Isaac's life teaches something hopeful too, that even imperfect people can continue carrying God's promise forward, not through loud greatness, but through quiet endurance. And maybe that is the kind of strength the world overlooks most. Isaac's story does not end with dramatic conquest. No giant victories, no kingdom established, no public triumph. Instead, his life ends quietly. And perhaps that is fitting. Because Isaac's strength was never loud. It was steady. He endured pressure, fear, conflict, disappointment, and family pain. And still, he continued forward, still carried the promise, still remained. And sometimes, remaining faithful quietly requires more strength than the world realizes. Isaac may not have lived the loudest story in Scripture, but through his quiet faithfulness, the promise endured. And through that promise, another generation would rise. A man who would wrestle with God, struggle with identity, and emerge transformed. Next, Jacob. If this story spoke to you, consider subscribing and walk with us through the lives of those who shaped history through faith, failure, and redemption.